Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the main event. Let's get ready to rumble!
Welcome to the Coffee with Cramer podcast. Thanks again for joining me here on the show. I'd like to welcome to the show my good friend, Daniel Bobo Kurlan. You all know him from Compound Media, from the old Opie and Anthony show. He's a regular on the show and a good friend. So thanks for stopping by, Dan. How you doing?
I'm doing good.
All right. Thanks for coming aboard. And we have on the bottom screen right now, my cousin, a great fan of sports, a great baseball fan, unfortunately a Yankee fan, but we're not going to hold that against him. Michael Christodora, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing awesome. Glad to be here.
Thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it. Now, this show is going to be the baseball MLB 2021 prediction show, where we're just going to, run down our list of what we think the outlook of Major League Baseball is going to be this year, who the contenders are, who the pretenders are, who's going to be playing in October for the World Series. We're going to put on our Nostradamus hats and see if we could come up with a good field. Luckily, a less field this year because we're going back to the normal playoff format, which last year was just ridiculous with all the baseball teams that got in. Baseball should never have that many teams in. What do you guys think about that?
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I thought a little bit overdoing it the way the playoffs were. I understand. I was able to accept that was last year because of a short season, but they shouldn't have. I was glad they didn't go back to that this year.
How about you, Mike?
I agree. I thought it was weird because we only had about 60 games, and I thought then with the playoffs they just tried overloading it. I was just like, well, you already gave us less games, so why try to give us more playoff teams? And it just didn't feel like baseball. It didn't feel right to me. So yeah, I totally agree with you guys.
I agree. And also another thing I'm happy about, and I don't know how you feel about this, Mike, but I'm assuming that Dan might be on the same page as me, where I'm a Mets fan. I'm a National League fan. So I love the fact that there's no DH in the National League this year. It might be the last season that we ever see a year with no DH in the National League because the collective bargaining agreement is up at the end of this year. And the Players Union is pushing real hard to get a universal DH across baseball. So I'm really happy that we're at least going to get this last hurrah with no DH because I cannot stand DH baseball. What do you guys think about that? Mike?
Well, it's funny. It's something my dad and I debate about all the time. I actually like the split. I think it's fun. So I like how the American League has the DH, National League doesn't. To me, when you watch a National League game and you see that one time when a pitcher does get a hit, I think that's super exciting. But my father, he couldn't care less about it. He wants the DH. So I kind of like the split. So to me, I'm on the fence with it. I can go either way. I understand, having one, not having one, but I kind of like it as it is. So I kind of want everything just to stay the same.
I agree with you for the record, where I like the American League having their DH, and I like the National League not, but I don't want to have the DH forced on me. What do you think, Bo?
Oh, agreed.
Yeah, same thing. I don't really like DH that much. It deprives us of all those great moments we've had,
like the Bartolo Colon home run, and
that home run that I'm still jealous that my brother in San Diego got to be at.
He was at that game. That's awesome. And I'll never forget, actually, I was at two really cool moments where a pitcher did something big. I was at the 1999 opening day for the Mets against the Marlins when Bobby Jones, remember that name from the 90s? Bobby Jones, he hit a home run in that game. It was awesome. And I was also at a Mets Expos game, I want to say 2001, where Al Leiter, who, if you remember Al Leiter, that guy was a great pitcher but could not hit for anything, ripped a triple into the corner.
Wow.
And so, I've always personally loved the pitcher hitting, but not only necessarily the pitcher hitting, more so the strategy that comes in later in the game. Do I let the pitcher hit? Do I have to take him out? Do I do a double switch?
Exactly.
That's the kind of stuff that I love.
One of my favorite years, I think it was 2012, or it was either 2012 or 2011 with Madison Bumgarner. The opening day, he hit 2 home runs that day.
Yeah.
And crazy part is they still lost. It was like, but yeah.
Yeah.
So I totally couldn't agree with you guys more. So exciting. And I think my earliest memory of a pitcher hitting either a big hit or a home run is Ace Andy. Andy Pettit a couple of times, would just be just suddenly versus the National League. I want to say it was one year. I want to say it was in 2000, one year versus the Mets. I don't know if I'm just kind of remembering it that way, but I just remember him hitting a huge double. It was just like Ace Andy just coming out of nowhere. That was the first time I had ever really seen it. And it was just like so exciting.
Yeah, and actually, you just
think it was
triggered in my head too. If you'll probably remember this, Dan, when Dae-Sung Koo, remember the former Met pitcher, actually who had never had a hit in the major leagues, doubled off Randy Johnson. So
I was actually at that game.
Were you really?
No way.
Yep, I was at that game. I was at Shea Stadium that day.
That's awesome. That was in like 2005, I want to say, right?
Yep, 2005.
Yeah. So,
wow.
I mean,
Randy Johnson.
Started
back then.
But all right, guys.
I feel we got him a little late as a Yankees fan. We got him a little late in his career, but
just a wee bit. Try. Just a wee bit. You guys just missed the boat on that one. But he still had some pretty good moments for the Yankees, though.
Yeah, but it wasn't Randy Johnson moments. It was just like, okay.
Right. It's true.
Yeah.
It's like, it reminds me a lot of like the New York Rangers guys, where they'll already get them and they're a shell of themselves by that point, because they're almost 40. Yeah. So
yeah, that's the hard part.
Yeah. All right, guys, let's get into this shit now. Let's see. Let's start off. Mike, you're a Yankees fan. Let's start off with the AL East. All right. Who do you think is taking the AL East crown? We got a good mix. There's been, looks like maybe the Red Sox and the Rays have taken a step back. Who do you think is the leader in that division?
Well, obviously, as a Yankees fan, I got to go with them. I have them at the top, and then I have Tampa Bay, at number 2. Tampa Bay scares me. I'm not going to lie. Every year, I want to say for the last 6-7 years, they've just been killing us Yankees 1-1. But I think overall, the Yankees are definitely going to win it. There's no reason why they shouldn't win, 100 games this year. And I kind of put Aaron Boone in the hot seat a little bit. To me, this is the year they have to do something. They got to at least make the World Series for me to be behind Aaron Boone and the whole squad. So I got to take the Yankees. And I have the Red Sox, 4th in division. So that makes me happy. That's where I'm seeing it.
I totally get that. I totally get that. And one thing I do want to ask you though. So the Rays trading away Blake Snell and everything like that doesn't make you less fearful of them?
I wrote that down actually. It doesn't. For some reason, I think it's almost a mental thing. I just feel like even before Tampa was really like the Tampa they are now, they would just seem to be just roll in. They just did not have that intimidation fear or whatever. It's weird when you watch sports. Some matchups just, like in a weird way, I'm going to make like a boxing reference. It kind of reminds me back in the day when, Ali fought Foreman, and, Foreman just blew through Frazier and Ken Norton, 2 guys that beat Ali, and Ali came in there and was just like, what? It doesn't matter. Like sometimes it's just weird, who versus who in sports. I just feel like right now, the last 6-7 years, maybe Tampa just has that it, like, you don't scare us. Like, so I don't think it will play any role against the Yankees, at least. Those are 2 strong pitchers in their bullpen. For the rest of the season, I think it's going to play a role, but against specifically Yankees, I don't think so.
Yeah, it's tough to argue that. You definitely are right on about that. Now, what do you think, Bo? Who do you have for your AL East winner?
I have a feeling the Mets are going to win a division in a very close neck and neck with the Braves.
No, the AL East.
Oh, the AL East?
Mm-hmm.
I have a feeling it's neck and neck with the Yankees and Toronto. they say Toronto seemed to really make a lot of big moves this offseason, that they're all of a sudden a unexpected factor this year. So I could easily see one team winning the division and the other winning a wild card.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you, Dan, to be honest. I'm really high on the Blue Jays this year. I think the Blue Jays are going to be really good. But my pick for the East is the Yankees, though. I mean, look, I really like the addition of Corey Kluber. It's a low risk, high reward type of scenario there. You know, Jamison Taillon, I think it's a really good move. They listened to Garrett Cole, bringing in his former teammate from Pittsburgh. This is a guy that, he may be closing in on 30 a little bit, but he also he hasn't really pitched in the last 2 years. So this is a guy that still has a lot of bullets to give. It's kind of like Jacob deGrom. deGrom might be 33 right now, but he might be really pitching with the arm of like a 29-year-old because he really didn't throw a lot of pitches early in his career. He had 2 Tommy Johns, and this is the type of guy that really had to fight to get to the major leagues. And it kind of reminds me of Jamison Taillon in that scenario. Now, also, when you look at the rest of the team, they brought back DJ LeMahieu, which they had to do. You add him to the mix of hopefully a healthy Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton. Not to mention one guy I think that people have been sleeping on for years is Clint Frazier. And Clint Frazier is having a hell of a spring training. And I expect him to be a big impact player this year and take a lot of playing time away from Brett Gardner. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, that's about right.
Mike?
I literally couldn't agree. Everything you said, I literally have written down here. And the only thing that gets me scared with Jamison Taillon is he just left the game the other day with tightness in his left shoulder. So that was like, I'm like, I don't want to see that happen. They're saying it's day by day. I think he'll be fine. But if that can get cleared up, that's another, scary pick. Also, don't forget, the Blue Jays also got George Springer. That's a big prospect. I mean, I have him ranked currently as the 20th best player in the league, George Springer. So, I mean, he's got strength to the left oblique right now, but, it's Springer. That guy's going to be back at some point hitting bombs.
Springer is going to improve them from a defensive perspective. He's going to improve them from a clutch perspective. He's going to improve them from a leadership perspective. And, the only thing I'd say that the main reason, aside from the experience and everything like that, and the depth that the Yankees have, the main reason why I'm not picking the Blue Jays over the Yankees in the division is because I don't think the Blue Jays really have anybody in their rotation after Ryu. And I like Ryu a lot. I think he's going to be a good starter for them, but I just don't really think that it's going to work out. They're going to have to add someone at the deadline, and they're going to have to find a couple of gems, maybe in their farm system or something like that, to really elevate them this season. But I do see them as a wild card. So, with that, let's move on to the AL Central, fellas. What do you guys think about the AL Central? I know a lot of people are probably looking at it as a 2-team race because Cleveland took a couple of steps back. Detroit and Kansas City are going to be Detroit and Kansas City this year. Even though I do like Kansas City picking up Andrew Benintendi, I think that's a good move for them. I think it's going to pay off for them in the long run too. But it looks to me like Minnesota and Minnesota and Chicago White Sox. So what do you guys think? What's your pick? How about you first, Mike?
I wrote down the same thing. I mean, last year you had the Twins, Indians, and White Sox. They were 1 game apart, battling. And you said perfectly, the Indians did take a step back a little bit. So I've written down the same thing. I obviously have to go with the Twins. I mean, from being a spoiled Yankees fan, I just love when the Twins win because every time we wrestle in the playoffs, the Yankees just steamrolls them. So it's just from being a spoiled fan. I have a couple friends who are Minnesota fans, oddly. So it's just kind of like that rivalry. So it's just fun for me when I see the Twins win the division. So I have them. But, I mean, the White Sox are talented. I mean, they added, pitcher Liam Hendricks and Lance Lynn. I think those are, 2 good guys. And I love Liam Hendricks' nickname, Slider. I just think that's so cool. So
yeah, it reminds me of the T-Rex song.
Yeah, and Lynn, he's a solid number 3 in the White Sox rotation. So I have the Twins just a little bit higher, but I think the White Sox will be right at their heels. I wouldn't be surprised if I'm wrong. It's reversed, but I'll go with Minnesota.
And Dan, what do you think?
I think probably the White Sox are probably going to edge out Minnesota by a small margin. This one looks like we could have one of the 2 wild cards come out of this division as well.
Yeah, I could definitely see that too, actually, and I agree with Mike. Actually, I'm going with Minnesota in this. I really like the White Sox, and to be honest, for most of the preseason and everything, I was really leaning towards picking the White Sox, but there's a couple of reasons why I haven't. The injury to Eloy Jimenez, where he's probably going to miss most of, if not all, this season, really scared me off. He was a hell of a player for them, big time difference maker. So I thought that was good. Another thing too is that I really like that the Twins added Andrelton Simmons. You stick him at their shortstop, especially with a guy like Kenta Maeda and Michael Pineda, who are going to induce a lot of ground balls. You get a guy like Andrelton Simmons playing shortstop, and that's a guy that could really improve their defense. Obviously, bringing back Nelson Cruz is big for me. Josh, and you add, you add him to that mix with guys like Josh Donaldson and Max Kepler and Miguel Sano, and then you have a rotation like I already mentioned, Kenta and Pineda, but Jose Barrios is the best guy they have on the team. So, and even though that's not to slight Chicago, because I'm a big fan of, like you said, Lance Lynn being their depth starter. Lucas Giolito, I think, is one of the best, young pitchers in baseball. I love Jose Abreu, their first baseman, Tim Anderson, their shortstop. So they have a lot of good things going on in Chicago. I even really like bringing Tony La Russa in. I mean, I know a lot of people didn't like them bringing him in. They, a lot of teams like the Mets and the Cardinals, a lot of those guys are going with young managers, and to pick up a 77-year-old Tony La Russa was a bit of an eyebrow raiser. Before we move on, what did you guys think about that? What do you think about La Russa as the White Sox manager, Mike?
Well, you said it perfectly. The way I think of it is, at least the way I think they're thinking of it, age before wisdom. So maybe, they want that old school, baseball, and, you just like you said, they have a lot of talent. So what I'm thinking is maybe, they get an old school guy who's just going to, mold them. And, it's always about who's the right guy for the team. I mean, you look at like someone like, Joe Torre for the Yankees. He wasn't that great of a manager, but he was just the right guy for the right situation. Yeah. So I always give someone a chance, regardless of what the criticism or says, because you just don't know. So, I'll see. Same thing. I was a little skeptical about it, but, I'm not one of those people who are going to jump on someone like, no, you don't know till you know. So it's going to be really interesting their season, and, I wish them all the luck.
I agree. I definitely agree. What do you think, Dan?
I think probably it could be a good move, could be a bad move. On the plus side, they brought in a guy that has a lot of experience being on contending teams. It seems like every year managing the Cardinals, they were a legitimate contender.
Yeah, and then not only the Cardinals, but he even has that success going back to the A's when he was the A's manager in the 1980s, when he got to 3 straight World Series as their manager in 88, 89, and 90. They only won 1, but he still got 1. So, he's definitely a hell of a manager and a Hall of Famer. So, I think it was a good move. You can't go wrong hiring a Hall of Famer. I mean, look, the Florida Marlins in 2003 hired, I think Jack McKeon was like 87 when they plucked him out of retirement and stuck him on their bench when they fired their manager in May after a bad start, and they went on to win the World Series that year. So, who knows? And I know I'm sorry to bring that up, Mike, because I'm sure it's a sore spot.
Yeah. But no, that's like a great example. I forgot that he was that old too. So that makes it even, you're right, makes it even worse. It's like, that was a rough one.
He's a great manager though, McKeon.
Yeah.
All right, fellas, let's move on. The AL West got a lot of interesting things going on out there. Oakland, Anaheim, Seattle could even be on the rise. I've heard that Jared Kalanick has a good shot of making the big leagues at some point this year. He was the key piece that unfortunately the Mets decided to trade for Robbie Cano and Edwin Diaz. So that'll always be a sore spot for me and Dan, no doubt about that. Especially if this guy goes on to become like a perennial all-star. But what are you thinking out west? Let's start with Dan this time. What do you think out west, Dan?
I think it could be 3 teams that could factor into this one. Oh, it could be Houston, the Angels, and Oakland.
Mm-hmm.
That there could.
And who you going with?
I have a feeling Houston might go with this one because they seem to have a couple of guys. This might be the last year that they're going to be a real contender.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I have a feeling Houston could might pull this one off by a nice little margin.
I wouldn't mind that actually, because I don't really have anything against Houston. I know a lot of people do, but the heel, like the wrestling heel in me, really wouldn't mind that. Just because it would piss so many people off if Houston came back and had a good year. What do you think, Mike? Who do you got going on out west?
You're making me laugh because it's the same thing. I kind of agree with you guys. I wrote the Astros first, Angels second, A's third, and I'm kind of shocked with myself. I'm putting the Angels already at second because we know they got Mike Trout and Ohtani, and since Ohtani's been in the league, he's been great. The only thing that I'm a little nervous about is his injuries. If he can stay healthy as he's is right now reported, I think that's what will make them second. And I want to see them get the playoffs, but same thing. I just don't know. How do you not put the Astros first? I mean, they still have Altuve. They still have Verlander, even though he's coming off Tommy John. It's just so many guys. Bregman, Correa. It's just how do you not pick them? So I got to go with them. And I think this will be the first year in the last couple of years that the A's don't win the division. And something's telling me that the A's this year just aren't making the playoffs. I don't know why. I know it's a little crazy, but I got to go with Houston and the Angels.
Well, I don't blame you, because when you look at the A's and they lost 2 big guys in Liam Hendricks and Marcus Semien, who both went to, Toronto. So I don't blame you guys for going with Houston. But to be honest, I'm going to be the odd man out here because I'm taking Oakland. Even though Oakland lost those 2 guys, I think they still have one of the better underrated managers in baseball in Bob Melvin. I think he's one of the guys out there, just, one of the best, managers out there. I mean, even that you heard Yoenis Cespedes rave about him. What a good manager he had out there. The other thing is, too, I very much considered Houston, but they lost George Springer, like you mentioned. And, if Verlander was coming back earlier, I really would feel more comfortable picking them. But from what I heard, Verlander isn't even going to be available until September the earliest, and maybe even later than that. So they would actually have to be in the playoffs for him to be coming back. And I just don't know about that. The A's are always competitive. They always lose somebody, and everybody always throws their hands up and says, "Oh, well, the A's are done." I always go back to when the A's went out as a playoff team in 2001. I think they won like 90 to 94 games, something like that year. They lose Jason Giambi to the Yankees and then go out and win 104 games the next year. So the A's just have a history of being able to do a lot with a little. And when you have a great third baseman like Matt Chapman, and you have Matt Olson, and when you look at they also did sign Sergio Romo and Trevor Rosenthal to patch up that bullpen. And then, you have a couple of guys like Montas and AJ Puck in that rotation. So I think that Oakland's still going to have enough out there. But to be honest, I'm picking Houston to miss the playoffs entirely. I think it's going to be Oakland winning the division and Anaheim taking the crown at a wild card spot. So before we move on to the National League, I got the Yankees winning the East and the Blue Jays being a wild card from that division, Minnesota winning the Central, and Oakland winning the West and having Anaheim, or LA, I still call them Anaheim, whatever, as the wild card team. So Mike, you got the Yankees, the Twins, and Houston. Who do you have as your 2 wild cards?
For my wild cards, I have to go with Tampa Bay. I think Tampa Bay is going to be a wild card this year, and I'm going with the White Sox.
White Sox, okay. Can't argue with that. And Dan, how about you? You got your division winners. Who are you picking to be your 2 wild card teams?
The 2 wild card teams. I got the White Sox and Toronto.
And Toronto, okay, perfect. So we got all our American League predictions down. Now let's move on to the National League, fellas. As we got, there's a lot to cover in the National League. We'll start in the NL East. The NL East is partial to me and Dan, as we're both Met fans. So we'll start off let's start off with Dan on this one. Dan, what do you think? Do you think the Mets have enough to overtake the Braves? Are you high on the Phillies, or you just think the Braves are going to roll through? What do you think?
I have a feeling the Mets are going to slightly edge out the Braves in going to be a neck and neck race the whole season, and I have a feeling Atlanta could be a wild card. That's how close it's going to be a neck and neck race.
Oh, so you think Atlanta's going to be a wild card? Okay. And what do you think, Mike? I know they have what's it called? There's a lot of talk at the top of this National League East from a Yankee fan perspective. Who do you have on?
Well, if the Mets didn't sign Francisco Lindor, who I think right now is still the best shortstop in baseball, he just hit a home run the other night against Miami. I don't know if you saw that bomb. I mean, crushed it.
He started off the spring 3 for 19, and he's been on fire since then. Fire.
He's hot. I think, of course, the Yankees Mets a little rivalry. I'm always a little critical on the Mets, but signing him, I mean, I think that's going to push it over for them. And not only that, I mean, National League East is actually one of my favorite divisions. Like every year, just no matter what, there's always, it's never the same. So I think it's going to be a really fun year this year. I have the Mets at number 1. I do. I actually have the Nationals number 2, which is I feel like people are sleeping on that. I know they don't have a lot in their payroll and stuff, but I have them 2 and the Braves 3. I don't know if I'm going to be right on that one. I definitely think the Mets are taking it, but I don't know why. Something's telling me to take the sleeper on the Nationals at number 2.
With the Nationals, with the Nationals too, a lot of people forget that they picked up Josh Bell, who, if you flash back to 2019, the guy had such a hell of a season from Pittsburgh. I remember I was actually at a Mets Pittsburgh game that year when he was in the midst of having this great season, and I had a couple of Pittsburgh fans behind me who were talking about Josh Bell like he was the next, Willie Stargell. So
yeah.
It was. I'm actually surprised that they traded him, but Pittsburgh, as soon as the guy gets good, they ship him off. Yeah,
yep,
exactly. The Pirates are gonna do pirate things, and I gotta say, I'm very happy to hear both you guys saying that the Mets are gonna win the division, because guess what? I'm about to buck that trend. I don't think the Mets win in the division.
Wow.
You know me. If you cut my wrists open right now, orange and blue is going to pour out of my veins. And and my girlfriend nods in the distance because she's an Islander fan. But that's not the orange and blue I'm talking about. The Mets, very good team, very much improved, very deeper from last season. But let me lay some facts on you boys, all right? The Atlanta Braves are one of the most talented teams in baseball. They added to that mix this year Charlie Morton. They brought back Marcelo Zuna, who had an incredible season last year. He was one of the most dangerous outfielders in the game. You add that to the mix of the reigning National League MVP, Freddie Freeman, Ronald Acuna, Ozzie Albies. I don't know. I love the Mets. I think they have a very deep team. But with that team they have down there, they have a very good young rotation. Soroka's coming back at the end of April or maybe even the beginning of May from that horrific injury he had last year, which he sustained against the Mets on Sunday Night Baseball on ESPN. So I don't know. I think when he comes back, I think the Braves are going to just have a little too much firepower for the Mets. I think the Mets are going to win the wild card. I think the Mets are going to be in the playoffs, win the wild card. I think it feels a lot like I mentioned this the other day on Twitter. It feels a lot like 1999 to me, where the Mets have a supremely talented team, primed for a playoff run. But the Braves just have a little bit more to win the division. Now, it doesn't mean that if they meet in the NLCS or the division series, whichever one it ends up being, again, that the Mets can't take them out, because the Mets can. They're that talented. But when it comes to going against the Braves like that, I think in the regular season, at least over the course of 162, the Braves are the better team. So what do you guys think about that? Mike?
Well,
Yeah.
I definitely think you made a compelling argument. Thanks, Dad. I'll take this one, I guess. I mean, you mentioned two studs, Freddie Freeman and Rondo Acuna Jr. I mean, I'm looking over my rankings because I've ranked the top 20 players. I have Freddie Freeman, obviously MVP. I have him as the fourth best player in the league right now. And, Rondo Acuna Jr. is not too far. I have him as 7th. So, I mean, you're not wrong. Two guys like that. And it's weird. This is interesting because I normally don't take the Mets. So I'm kind of hoping a little luck there, or, some, whatever you want to call it. I'm hoping, that, the Braves don't, because the Braves just always have been very well against the Mets, and great comparison to 99. I think you hit the nail on the coffin perfectly there. Hopefully, though, you're wrong because you're a Met fan. So
I hope I'm wrong too.
Yeah. I did want to ask you guys, though.
Yeah. Fire away.
No, go ahead. Let's see what Dan says. I'll come back to that question.
Okay. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, I see. It looks like a feasible prediction. It just has that look of the Mets being and the Braves being neck and neck, like in the end of the 90s, the early 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
Just look at that. And I could see me and this Braves fandom that follows me on Twitter.
Yeah.
Could be going back and forth with him on Twitter all season long.
It feels like one of those years. And luckily for us Mets fans, though, Dan, we don't have Kenny Rogers coming out of the bullpen to screw us over again.
Oh my God. That game, I could not sleep the entire night after seeing that, when that game happened. I was sleep over that game.
I was 12 when that game happened and vividly remember crying myself to sleep. So what's going on, Mike? What were you going to say?
Yeah, that was a tough one for you guys. I was about eight or 9 then, so I remember that. I'm Met fans. I want to see what you guys think about catcher James McCann.
I love McCann.
How do you guys feel about him?
I think McCann, in a lot of ways, adds not only the great. You guys there? Hello?
I can hear you now.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, I'm here. I have a feeling McCann is a great veteran presence they brought in as a catcher, and he seems to really show, at least so far during catcher that's going to be difficult to steal on this year.
Definitely. And another good thing about McCann is that he calls a great game. He really does, and he frames pitches. Now, one thing that really killed the Mets with Wilson Ramos, and even to a certain extent in his young career, Travis d'Arnaud, that neither of them framed pitchers well. Now, that they were lucky that they had really good pitchers the Mets had, over the course of the years, like Wheeler and DeGrom and Harvey in his prime, except Syndergaard, et cetera, et cetera. But they finally have a catcher that is not only above average, but a very good pitch framer. So this is a guy that could steal an out every once in a while for you. This is a guy that knows how to call a game and set up in the right spots. So I'm very, very high on James McCann, I think. And you know what? To be honest, he had a hell of a spring too with the bat. And a lot of people, I think his bat is getting ready to break out. He's not going to be, he's not going to hit 330. He's not going to hit 25 home runs, but he's going to be a serviceable bat at the bottom of that lineup where he can come up with a clutch hit every once in a while.
Yeah, I have a feeling there's going to be a big key moment in the season that he might play a factor in.
I agree. I totally agree.
Yeah, me too. That's why I asked, what I like too about, him being a catcher and, older guy is, catcher's supposed to be, a lot of people forget, catcher's supposed to be, the most, in a way, not, I don't want to say important, but is like the foundation out there,
Yep.
and because catcher's seeing everything a little bit more. So that's what I've always liked about him. When he plays, he looks like he takes charge. And same thing, he calls the game really well. So I'm excited. I couldn't agree more. I think he's actually going to have a lot of RBIs this year. And I think he's going to, like you guys said, just have a key factor. I think there's going to be multiple games where, it's going to be bomb of the ninth or something crazy where, McCann's going to just come in clutch and win them the game. I really think so. I'm a fan of him.
I definitely think you're right about that. And, I'm looking forward to see James McCann over the course of a full season with the Mets here. I think it's going to be a real positive. But all right, so let's move on, fellas. We got the National League East in the back pocket now. How about the NL Central? We'll start off with Mike on this one. A lot of good teams to pick from right now. What are you looking at in the NL Central? Who are you eyeing?
There are a lot of good teams. I have to go with Milwaukee, though. I really think Christian Yelich is going to have a huge year. I'm actually thinking he's going to be the MVP in 2020. I think he's going to have a little bit of a bounce back, and it's going to be really interesting. But I'm really excited for this, division because you have Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt, pairing as a duo. That's a dangerous duo. Unfortunately, though, for as good as those two guys are, I think they're going to fall short because I only think they're going to be about 500. I don't think they'll make the playoffs, but I think just from a fun factor, it's going to be fun watching them two play. Do I think as an overall, as a team, they'll be effective? I don't think so. So I got to go with the Brewers. But I have the Cubs second, right? And then the Cardinals third. And then, obviously we got the Reds and Pirates. Pirates, I think, are going to be last on everyone's list. But
the Pirates are pretty bad.
Yeah.
So, and I really like your pick of the Brewers. One thing a lot of people forget about too with the Brewers is you mentioned Christian Yelich. Now, what's the rest of that outfield? They added Jackie Bradley Jr. They have Lorenzo Cain. That is one of the best defensive outfielders in outfields as a whole in baseball that I've seen in a long time. All three of those guys are far above average defenders. And I know Lorenzo Cain might not be what he was 2 or 3 years ago, but he's still a very, very good defensive outfielder. So it's going to be really fun to see those guys go out there and chase some balls down. So you're definitely not crazy picking the Brewers but the one thing that scares me about them is their pitching. But, if you got Josh Hader in the back of the pen, you can always find a way to patch things together for the first few innings.
That's true.
What do you think, Dan? So he's got the Brewers. What do you got?
Well, a friend of mine, one of my peeps in Wisconsin, is probably going to be happy that I picked the Brewers to win it. Probably going to be a close one. St. Louis is probably going to miss by not that much, not making the playoffs probably.
Well, I can't argue with you there. But to be honest, I'm going to tell you guys this. I'm picking the Cardinals. I think the Cardinals are going to have enough. I don't like, what the Cubs did. The Cubs traded away Yu Darvish. That they lost a couple of pieces. I think the Cubs have taken a step back. I think obviously Cincinnati, who was a trendy pick to pick last year because they had such a good front of that rotation and everything behind Castillo with Sonny Gray and Trevor Bauer, but with Sonny Gray's hurt right now and Trevor Bauer is in Los Angeles. I obviously think the Reds have taken a big step back as well. So the bottom three, in my opinion, in that division are the Reds, Cubs, and the Pirates in that order, in my opinion. But the top two, when it comes to the Brewers and the Cardinals, I just go with the Cardinals. The Brewers pitching scares me. I really like Jack Flaherty, the anchor of that rotation. You have Adam Wainwright, who's hanging out in the wings still. They have a couple of good arms in that bullpen. Jordan Hicks throws 100, so he could come out there and blow people away if he's healthy. And you mentioned the two big guys too. You add Paul Goldschmidt for a full season and Nolan Arenado, who, look, a lot of people might say, oh, it's the Colorado effect with his bat and everything. It's a little bit embellished. I think he's still going to be fine, especially in St. Louis, because St. Louis just seems to be, I don't know, like a great spot to resurrect your career. We've seen it plenty of times before, guys come into St. Louis and just looking like a completely revitalized player.
Carlos Beltran's first one that pops my head.
Carlos Beltran, or the guy that stuck in my head actually was Larry Walker, and even Mark McGwire. I mean, Mark McGwire was having a good year, but nothing near what he did in St. Louis. And you look at Scott Rowland, had a great year. Had a great career down there at some point. So I really think, and not only from the offensive perspective, but defensively, he's going to help improve that team as well. And you add that to the mix of guys like Dylan Carlson and Paul DeYoung, and all the guys they got there. I think they have enough, and I really like their manager too. I think he's an underrated guy. He's a lot he's cut from the same cloth as what's it called, the Mets manager Rojas and the Braves manager. I think like a lot of these organizational guys that know their teams are really starting to be the trend now, and we see it kind of works. I mean, we haven't seen that with Rojas yet, but there's been evidence of these organizational guys paying off. So I do think that Schilt over there in the Cardinals is going to lead them to a division title this year. But like you guys mentioned too, I don't think Milwaukee is going to be far behind. It's going to be a neck and neck race the whole time. So there's that. And with that, let's move on to the NL West, our final division on the docket right now. Obviously, we have the division topped off with the defending champion Los Angeles Dodgers. You can't argue with what the San Diego Padres have done this offseason, just having a really remarkable turnaround of talent they've added. And that's in addition to guys they've added over the last couple of years, like Hosmer and Machado. What are you guys thinking? We'll start off with Dan. Dan, who do you got for the NL West?
The West is going to be an interesting division. This one could actually have a wild card out of it. I have a feeling the Dodgers are going to slightly edge out San Diego, which made a big improvements. As a matter of fact, my brother, he knows someone pretty high up in the Padres organization. One of his friends is very high up there. They're very high on you got Tatis Jr., who's probably one of the biggest rising young stars in the game, and Darvish. It looks like they might miss slightly on a division and will end up being a wild card.
Yeah, I definitely can't disagree with you there. So you got the Dodgers as the division winner and the Padres as a wild card. What do you think, Mike? You agree with that?
I 100% agree with him. I mean, I think you guys both hit the nail on the coffin. I mean, the Padres, like you said, changed Darvish, and they also got Blake Snell too. So I think they've been doing very well in the offseason. And one thing that kind of scares me a little bit is first, obviously you have the Dodgers, World Series champs, but they've had a fuel under them for a while because they kept coming short. So you see a lot of teams when they finally win the World Series, I don't know if they get complacent or that fuel is gone. Obviously, I still have the Dodgers as the winners, but I don't know if they're going to be, just steamrolling the way they've been the last bunch of years. So I agree with Dan. Yeah. I agree with Dan. Dodgers winners and Padres, I have them as the wild card as well.
Yeah, just like Dan said, you can't disagree with that at all. And you hit on the teams finally getting their championship and then kind of coming back to earth. And they have what they've called like the championship hangover. And I do think that could play a role this year, but I agree with you. The Dodgers, especially now with Trevor Bauer adding him to that rotation and a lot of people forget, everybody remembers Clayton Kershaw. Everybody talks about Trevor Bauer coming in now, getting the money that he got. Everybody seems to forget about Walker Buehler. And I'm telling you right now, if I was starting a team and I had to choose between 3 pitchers to start, and it was those 3, Kershaw, Bauer, and Walker Buehler, I'm picking Walker Buehler 20 times out of 20. I'm picking Walker Buehler 100 times out of 100. And it's no disrespect to Clayton Kershaw, and it's kind of disrespect and a middle finger to Trevor Bauer. But it just means I think Walker Buehler is is one of the best pitchers in baseball. I would put him on the same level as DeGrom and Cole. I mean, he's right there. He might not be at, exactly their level, but if he's not 1, 2, 3, he's top 5, no doubt about it.
Bueller.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It just was infectious having to say that.
No, you nailed it there, buddy. You nailed it.
Nice job, man.
So just to wrap up with you guys, I totally agree. This is the one division that we're all totally in sync with. I think the Dodgers are the division champs, and I think the San Diego Padres take the wild card. Obviously the Padres have done everything right, building this team. I loved when they signed Hosmer. I thought they were crazy when they signed Manny Machado because I didn't see a lot of these other moves coming. But I mean,
me neither.
When you add that to the list of guys that they have, like Chris Paddock, and who people forget about, who burst onto the scene a couple of years ago, and he kind of had a down year last year, but I think he's gonna rebound and show himself to be the pitcher that he was a couple of years ago. You add him to that mix of Snell and Darvish, and they got a rotation that you can go out off and running with. That's why they even felt comfortable enough to trade Joey Lucchesi to the Mets, who's a pretty good pitcher. I mean, I've seen Lucchesi a lot this spring, and I really liked what I see. He's a very good pitcher. He reminds me, and I know this might be a crazy comparison, but he kind of reminds me of David Wells in his prime.
Wow.
Now, it took David Wells a long time to put it together. Now, Wells had a couple of decent seasons. He was with Toronto when they won a championship early in his career, but he wasn't really one of the pitchers. But then when he finally got to the Yankees in 96, 97 and put it all together as, close to, if not a 30-year-old, then he became one of the best pitchers in baseball and threw, the perfect game and, had just a great career from that point forward. And Joey Lucchesi looks like one of those guys. He doesn't walk a lot of batters. He pitches to contact. He's not a big strikeout guy. He just, I don't know why. It just reminds me of David Wells, maybe in a little bit better shape.
That's a really interesting comparison. I'm going to have to keep an extra eye on him. And, once you said David Wells and you already said the perfect game, I'll never forget just the David Wells, a perfect game. Like, I'll just never forget that. Like, I hear that name. I hear, like, the audio in my head of the commentator. But I'll
never forget that too, man.
Yeah, I definitely think we're all pretty much in agreement in the West. And I think we're also all in agreement that the Rockies are going to be, I literally in big bold, wrote yikes with that Arenado. I think I have a feeling all three of us, including Dan's, going to agree as well that they're the bottom of the division. I feel bad because I know one Colorado fan and he's been like crying. He's just not, he's not ready for the season. He's like trying to prolong it. I'm like, it's coming up, buddy.
They got good fans out there too. When I was out there, a couple of years ago, I was out there in September of 2019, actually with our Uncle Rob and cousin Danny and Uncle Jim. I was out there with those guys.
Awesome.
And we had a really good time. Those fans are very hospitable, very passionate, and they have a great stadium. It's one of my favorite stadiums, and I've wanted to go to that stadium since, one of the first times I saw that stadium. I remember looking at when they hosted the All-Star game in 1998. So I've wanted to go to that stadium for a long time. Beautiful stadium. Really feel bad, especially with their owner Dick Monfort, just pretty much just telling the fans that they're gonna be trading off all these big guys, and you're lucky if they sign Trevor Story to a contract. But then the thing is too, even if they sign Trevor Story to a contract, that just starts the clock to when they're going to trade him. Because
exactly, it's not going to help at all.
I knew the second that when they signed Arenado, that big time contract, you said, I was hoping that I'd be like, hey, maybe by the time that this contract turns bad for Colorado, Steve Cohen will own the Mets and they can trade for him. But instead they chose Lindor. And to be honest, if I had to choose between Arenado and Lindor, I'm picking Lindor. No doubt about it.
I agree.
Guys, as we get to that, we were just talking about David Wells a minute ago. Let's go to the other thing we were going to do now that our official Major League Baseball predictions are done. Let's go with I'm sorry. Before we move on, give me your World Series prediction. Dan, let's start with you. Who do you think right now, from what we've said, who do you got in the World Series in October of this year?
I have a feeling this could be the second Subway Series we've seen since the existence of the Mets. This could be the second one we've seen. Could be a different outcome, and it's get several close games.
I hope you're right about that. What do you think, Mike?
All right, this is going to be a little bit of a crazy one, and I don't know why I'm thinking this. And I'm actually going to say Houston is going to the World Series. Something's telling me that they're going to come out firing. And I hate Houston now with their whole cheating and the trash can. I loved Altuve. I was a huge fan of him. Now, when I look at him, I just want him to strike out every time. But I'm going to go Houston, and I'm going to go – this is tough, but I think the Brewers.
Wow, Houston Brewers.
Yeah,
I'll tell you this much. Major League Baseball would be pissed off about that World Series.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if it's just I don't know if I'm picking that because of that, kind of just to add fuel to the fire. Obviously, I want my Yankees. I would love to see a matchup to Yankees-Mets again. Of course, I would be on the opposite side as you guys, but I don't know. I'm just having like a week. I think this is going to be a great season, but I think it's going to be two teams out of nowhere, kind of. Houston's been there, but, I think Brewers are going to I really think they're going to have a really big season.
Well, that's I like that off the wall pick. And Dan, I got to tell you too, I am very, very tempted to agree with you on the Yankees Braves front, on the Yankees Mets front. But I'm sorry, I just blew the spoiler. I mentioned 99 before, and I don't know why it just has that feeling to me. Yankees Braves is the World Series I'm thinking this year. For the first time in 21 years to be meeting in the World Series. 22 actually. It's 21 since the Subway Series. So it's 22 years since they met in the World Series. And I just I don't know why that kind of just stands out to me this year for some reason. I think the Braves got really close last year, just like the Yankees did, and I think both teams are gonna pay it off big time this year and meet in the World Series one more time. So
I'm telling you, Yankees fan, I would love that. I would be very happy with that matchup.
It's very tough, though. Very tough.
Yeah, real quick, it's kind of funny. All my friends get mad at me. I'm obviously a very spoiled Yankees fan. Grew up with the whole '90s Yankees. I'm outraged at them still that they in 2019. I was like, it's been 10 years since they won. So I'm very spoiled and very stubborn with them right now. So subconsciously, obviously, I want them to win, but I think that's also why I didn't pick them. And they didn't sign. They should have signed Madison Bumgarner. I'm still very hurt about that. I know he's not winning.
I totally agree with you. I agree with you. I think the Diamondbacks. There's actually a couple of guys that I thought the Yankees should have gotten, because just like with the left-handed bats, the Yankees. I thought the Yankees should have signed Michael Brantley. The Yankees need a left-handed bat, but another guy is going back. The Yankees should have been the team to trade for Chris Sale. The Yankees should have been the team to go out there and get Dallas Keuchel when he was first available years ago. And the Yankees, and just like you said, I totally agree with you, Mike. I totally agree. The Yankees need a big-time lefty in the same vein as guys like Whitey Ford and Andy Pettitte. The Yankees always have a big lefty on the mound because it just works in Yankee Stadium for whatever reason. And I totally agree.
Yeah, the last one we had was CC Sabathia, and that worked out well in 2009. But when they didn't sign Madison Bumgarner, to me, I had said it right there. I remember writing on Facebook, and everyone was calling me crazy. I was like, certain guys are just, obviously his numbers aren't there. When you look into the stat sheet, it's not impressive until you look at his postseason numbers. I think he's that guy that I'll still right now. You ask me right now, currently, if I can have any pitcher in the postseason, I'm still taking Madison Bumgarner. So when they didn't make that happen, that bothered me, and I knew that they weren't going. So I'm a little upset with them, but I would love to see Yankees Braves. I would not turn that down. I'll be the first on the TV, talking about my Yankees, especially if they win.
That would definitely be a lot of fun. As long as the Braves didn't beat the Mets, then I would be very upset.
Yeah.
But all right, so let's move on. We have another one more segment before we call it a day here. I want to thank Dan and Mike again for joining me here on Coffee with Kramer. Thank everybody for tuning in. It's been a lot of fun so far. But we're gonna do something a little different and a little fun, Mike, because he's starting up his podcast now. Mike, I want you to give your podcast a quick plug. Before we get into this, because you said in your podcast that you want to do top 10 lists and have all these fun games and everything like that. And when I saw that, it really got me thinking, because having you on, I thought it'd be a nice little plug to have for your podcast to kick it off here, to end this with a top 10 list of the top 10 baseball teams of all time, really in the World Series era. We're not going to count the 67-0 1869 Red Stockings. We're not going to count them. So it's really the World Series there. Keep it 1901 and on, 1903, right around there, whatever and on. So let's start off with number 10. All right. We'll start off. Dan, you have your list handy?
Yeah, hold on a second. Let me get my list.
No problem. You get your list. What's that?
Let me scroll up to the list.
No problem. You get set, and we'll start off with Mike. We'll get back to you in a second. Mike,
all right.
Number 10. Who do you got as your 10th greatest team of all time?
Okay, a lot of people might call me crazy, and it kills me to say this as a Yankees fan, but I have to put the 2004 Boston Red Sox.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, everyone knows that story. Anyone who watches baseball, they won 98 games, 64 losses, but the only team to come back from 3-0 in the ALCS and then just to steamroll, to sweep the rest. I mean, I cried. I mean, game 3 against the Yankees won 19-8. It was just, everyone, the whole world thought the Yankees won that. And to have that come back and break the 85-year slump of the curse of the Bambino, it's just sadly remarkable. So I have to put them as the 10th best team.
Can't argue with that. That Red Sox team is just outside of the top 10 for me, but really, really can't argue with that at all. How about you, Dan? Who do you got number 10?
Number 10. Well, this team I would put could have been higher in the list, but the reason they're 10 is that even though they did have the 2001 Seattle Mariners, they had 116 wins, 19 wins, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, 116 and 46.
I would have put them at higher had they lived up to what. And I know someone from Seattle who really that whole year felt they were going to win the World Series, and they came up very short of that.
Yeah.
So because how the season ended, they're a bit lower, so they're 10.
Yeah, I don't blame you at all. Now, the Seattle Mariners, definitely one of the greatest regular season teams of all time. But for me, a team to be on this list has to win the World Series.
That's what I was about to say.
Yeah. Now I can't disagree with you at all, Dan, because that Mariners team was fantastic. They didn't make my top 10. They would be in the mix, no doubt about it. They're just outside the top 10. But the only reason they didn't make it for me is because they didn't win the World Series. The team that I have at number 10 is the 1937 New York Yankees. Now, the 1937 New York Yankees, managed by Joe McCarthy. They have Hall of Famers Bill Dickey, Lou Gehrig, Joe DiMaggio, Lefty Gomez, Red Ruffing, and as a rookie, Joe DiMaggio hit .346 with 46 home runs and 167 RBIs. They went 102 and 52, and they beat the Giants in the World Series. But now that might not be one of the best records of all time, but you really could pick any team of the Yankees from that late 30s run where they won 36 to 39, and it's really, you're splitting hairs. So I chose the 37 Yankees just because I thought they were the best representation of that late 30 Yankees run. So I got the 37 Yankees as the number 10. So I'm already going way back in the day. So let's move on to
I think that's great. I think that's a great pick. To add to yours real quick, I made my list the same way. You had to win the World Series. So it's funny that, Dan picked the 2001 Mariners, because I literally wrote, anytime I do top 10 lists, I always write rules on the top. And I always like add a couple of teams. Like I have the team that didn't make it, the 1906 Cubs. They still from today have the best win percentage with 116 games won.
Yep.
I couldn't add Cleveland, who won 111 games one year. And then
54.
I wrote sadly 2001 Mariners because I reside in Seattle right now. So anytime I talk to people, that's all they bring up. If you bring up baseball, 2001. And, I remember that year, Ichiro Suzuki, I'm a huge fan of him. So that was definitely a tough season. But, I mean, you bring up baseball, I'm not even joking. It's been 20 years and people are still bringing up 2001 here.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. That was a great team. John Olerud, Brett Boone, they had a hell of a lineup on their hands, no doubt about it. And that was after they traded away Griffey. So
yeah,
very interesting. All right, so let's move on to number 9, fellas. Let's start off with Dan this time. Dan, who do you got number 9?
Number 9, I got the 1995 Braves.
Okay.
A team that looked like they had been wanting to win the World Series after making it so many years and not living up to the expectations. This was the only Brave team of that dynasty in the 90s that actually pulled it off and sealed the deal.
You're right. They lost to the Twins in 91. They lost to the Blue Jays in 92. They lost to the Phillies in the 93 NLCS. And then they lost to the sorry, I just noticed that the Rangers are winning 1-0. So we got that going for us. Now when you look at that Braves team, that 95 team, really, really tough to beat. David Justice, Fred McGriff, obviously the 3 Hall of Famers anchoring the rotation, and Smoltz, Glavine, and Maddox. So it really, really can't argue with that at all. Really good pick, Dan. What do you think about that, Mike? Who do you got number 9?
Well, first off, absolutely great pick. The 95 Braves just fall short in my top 10 list. They would be close somewhere in there because of all their, I don't know if that's fair to penalize them for all their failed attempts, but to me, that was a team that should have won way more. And, you guys are going to laugh, and I think Dan's definitely going to, debate me on this one because I'm picking a team that I don't think anyone's going to have on this list. But I have the 2001 Arizona Diamondbacks.
Oh, okay.
They're the fastest expansion team to win the World Series, their 4th season. They had Kurt Schilling, Randy Johnson, who were just 2 studs. And I'm not really, believe it or not, a big Kurt Schilling fan, but, you can't not like Randy Johnson. And combined, they won 43 victories. And sadly, they did have that dramatic, series against my Yankees. And, they pissed me off with all those little bloopers and little hit after hit at, Mariano on the mound. And
I'll never forget that Tony Womack double in that series off him. Never forget that, man. Sure.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say too. And even though they lost, it's one of my most memorable World Series with them because Mr. November with Derek Jeter hitting the home run and just the whole year of New York to me with 2001. But to me, it was just so dramatic. They won 92 games, the fastest. To me, I think people forget about them, even though it was. Maybe they don't jump out on the screen with, stats, but people forget about them. And unfortunately, I got to add them in my list.
That's a good pick too, man. Very good pick. Can't disagree with you too much. They just missed the list for me, but very, very good pick. I'm a big Kurt Schilling fan. I think he should be a Hall of Famer. Especially with his postseason resume, if you're going to put a freaking stiff, like some of these guys that have gotten in the Hall of Fame, like, look, I know he's taking a lot of crap, but Harold Baines is not a Hall of Famer to me. I'm sorry. No. I like Tim Raines a lot. I love Tim Raines as a player. Tim Raines was not a Hall of Famer. I'm sorry.
Great.
So he was a very, very good player, but very, very good doesn't get you in the Hall of Fame. You have to be great. And
great.
I think Kurt Schilling, especially when the game mattered most to his team, Kurt Schilling showed up big time, and I think he was like 11-2 in the playoffs. Just great in the World Series. You got to remember too, he pitched in the 93 World Series for the Phillies. He pitched in the 2001 World Series for the Diamondbacks, the 2004 World Series for the Red Sox, and the 2007 World Series for the Red Sox. So this is a guy who had a lot of big time experience, and obviously Randy Johnson. So can't argue with you at all. Can't argue it at all. And then everybody forgets about the guy who got the game-winning hit, Luis Gonzalez, who, by the way, went on to hit 57 home runs that year. So good pick. Very, very good pick. For me, my number 9 is the 1984 Detroit Tigers.
Ooh, that's a fan favorite. A lot of people.
The Detroit Tigers. I mean, you have Hall of Famer Alan Trammell on there, Kirk Gibson, who went on to. Everybody remembers him later on in his career with what's it called? The Dodgers in '88, hitting the home run.
Yep.
And then you have Hall of Fame manager Sparky Anderson as their manager there. So and not to mention too that the thing that got me really on their bandwagon, because 104-58, great regular season record. Not one of the greatest of all time. Obviously, there have been more than 10 other teams that have a better record than that. But I think when you really break it down, they started off the season 35-5, the greatest 40-game start in the history of baseball. Nobody's even come close to that. When you start off 35-5, you win 104 games. You have a couple of Hall of Famers on your team. I think it's a slam dunk. I got the '84 Tigers on there. They went on to beat the Padres in the World Series that year. So World Series champions, couple of Hall of Famers, won 104 wins. So it seems like a slam dunk to me.
That's definitely a great pick. I mean, and Gibson's one of my all-time favorite players because of the dramatic hitting the home run with the Dodgers. I mean, most people too, at least people I say, the younger viewers don't know, like, the Dodgers got him to win a ring. I mean, not too many. I mean, there's a handful of them, but to get a guy to like, boom, take us over the edge is just, he's always been a fan favorite. And that's a great pick. They're like literally like my number, like 10. They're just short. I mean, you made a great argument. I actually wasn't aware of that. They started out, I forgot it was that great of a start, 35-5. So maybe I might have to reconsider because of that. But great pick. I mean, you can't go wrong. That's a solid team. A very fan favorite. Even if you just Google teams, I'm always seeing little posts of people bringing up that team. So yeah, great pick.
Definitely a great team. Definitely.
Yeah.
All right, guys, let's move on to number 8. We'll start with Mike this time. Mike, who you got at number 8?
Okay, number 8. I think you guys are going to be very happy with me on this one. I have the 1986 Mets.
I think you did the Mets dirty. No, okay, 86 Mets, number 8. I like it. Now, obviously, go at it. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, to me, just for starters, it's one of the best ever pure entertainment series, the whole year for the 86 Mets in the World Series. I mean, the first season, the game 1, they got in a brawl and fight with Keith Hernandez, just my favorite defensive first baseman ever, because I was always a lefty. He's a lefty. I mean, they won 108 games, and they were just, you had Dwight Gooden, who was the true ace, who won 17 games. They won the NL East by 21 and a half games. That is huge. And I literally wrote like whopping. Like that was just like, I mean, they were a great, tough team. And not to mention that series, against Boston Red Sox had everything. I mean, everyone talks about, the Bill Buckner, stuff like that. And even people, we saw the Super Bowl, was it the Super Bowl? And the guy went streaking and nowadays, get arrested. In the 86 World Series, you had a guy who like parachuted into the stadium and he was celebrated, and he literally just went into the stand. So you don't even see that no more. So it was funny because during the Super Bowl, I brought that up and no one knew what I was talking about. I was like, oh, it's like 86 kind of. And I literally had blank stares. So to me, it was just a very fun season. You had a great Dallas Star. I mean, the lineup, just a great, tough season. And I wish, I do think the Mets should have won more, but 86 is just a fun year. Maybe we're a little biased because we're from New York, but just a great, great year. I mean, literally, to me, they set the tone in game 1. The first game of the season, they get in a fight, and they're like, yeah, we're not going nowhere. So,
yeah,
great.
And they fought a lot that year. And
I love that. I love that on a team. You don't see it no more, but when a team is ready to fight, I like that feel. And I actually think that's what the Yankees need a little bit more. Some old school, I'll get in your face. Let's go. But 86 Mets, number 8. I mean, can't go wrong with it.
Can't beat that pick at all. Dan, what do you think? Who do you got number 8?
Number 8, I got the 76 Reds. That dynasty, that big red machine dynasty that had multiple Hall of Famers on that team.
Oh yeah, so that was the team that beat the Yankees in the World Series.
Yep.
Yeah, that was
the second year too.
That was the team that beat the Yankees, And by the way, a lot of people don't realize that World Series drove Steinbrenner to be the Steinbrenner we all know today.
That's true. Going and signing Reggie Jackson afterwards, and that was Catfish Hunter's first year, I believe.
Yep.
So that's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. That definitely set the tone for the Yankees for the next 20 years or so, and still to this day, really, when you really think about it, because his sons are still doling out the big bucks to guys like Garrett Cole and everything like that. So you got the Mets at 8. Dan, you have the 76 Reds. I, at number 8, I'm going just a wee bit further back, as I'm taking the 1929 Philadelphia Athletics.
Ooh.
Now
They're in my list somewhere.
What's that?
They're in my list somewhere. You'll hear them soon from me.
All right. Now the 29 Athletics, obviously Jimmy Fox on that list, Hall of Famer Mickey Cochran, Lefty Gomez was on that team, and they just have a hell of a that was a team actually that in a couple of years ended up having to be broken up because they couldn't afford, even back then, to pay these guys all that money because they were so good. They were dominating the league. So they ended up having to get broken up. They beat the Cubs in the World Series 4-1 that year. They went 104-46. One of the best teams of all time. It's really tough to pick against them. I have them listed at number 8, but I could have definitely gone a little bit higher with that. Actually, now that I'm really looking at it, I probably should have switched them and number 7. But even so, I'm still very comfortable with how I have them. I think the A's at number 8, one of the best teams of all time, no doubt about it. Bunch of Hall of Famers, and definitely sealed the deal by winning the World Series against the Cubs. And
Great.
If they had lost that World Series, then we wouldn't have had 1908 drilled in our heads all our life.
Yeah.
So let's keep it rolling, fellas. Number 7. We'll start with Mike this time. Who you got at number 7?
Okay, number 7. I finally have my first Yankees team. I have the 1961 New York Yankees. 109-53. I mean, that was just a huge year in baseball in general. That's when Roger Maris, beat Babe Ruth's home run record. It was just a battle between him and Mickey Mantle, who was going to get it. Unfortunately, Mickey Mantle fell short with 54 home runs. I love how you say fell short. A guy hit 54 home runs. We're like,
Yeah.
But I mean, Whitey Ford too was 25-4 that year. Won his only Cy Young in his Hall of Fame career. It's just a great year. I mean, how do you go wrong? Every time you talk about the 61 Yankees, it's always the famous, why did the Yankees win the World Series? It's because they wear pinstripes? No, they got Mickey Mantle. It's just, it's just a great team, and they're definitely my number 7.
It's funny to me though, because I'm surprised that you have that Yankees team listed so low, because I have them much higher.
Yeah, I mean, I think I have a couple teams that just obviously they're great, but some forgotten gems. So I
can totally understand that. And Dan, who do you have at number 7?
Yeah, coincidence. I have the 61 Yankees also at 7.
Wow.
There you go, Dan.
Okay.
Yeah, that was like that's like a legendary Yankee team. I hear some of the Yankee friend people that I know that are a lot older than me mention those guys to this day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, especially, our parents, generation and everything. That's, the team you heard growing up about. I was just over at my buddy Spencer's house recently, and his dad is of that age, and he had this beautiful painting of Mickey Mantle and Roger Maris both standing at Yankee Stadium. It might have not been 61, might have been 62, but it was of that era. And it was, it just goes to show you how high people place that team in the Yankees lineage, and definitely one of the greatest Yankee teams and baseball teams of all time, no doubt about that. So you guys both had the 61 Yankees listed at 7. Me, I'm going to be a little bit more recent with my pick, as I'm going to go and I know this is a pick that could get beat up a little bit, but I'm going to go with the 2018 Boston Red Sox. Now, Red Sox went 104-58 that season, which now this is a weird stat to me because I don't know if you guys are aware of this, But you know that 4 teams in the history of baseball have gone 104-58, and all of them have won World Series.
That's weird. I did not know that.
Yes.
Who are the other 3? No offhand.
The other 3 are the 1970 Baltimore Orioles, the 1975 Cincinnati Reds, and the 1986 New York Mets.
That's funny. I have 2 of those teams written down on the side of my notes who are like, I have them somewhere, some of them I don't, but I have 2 of those teams written down. That's funny.
Yeah, so those teams are right on there. And, you know, it's funny because just like we mentioned before, just because you win that many games doesn't mean you're going to win the World Series. The 69 Orioles won 109 games and lost to the Mets. You know, you have the 54 Cleveland Indians that won 111 games and lost to the New York Giants. So just because you win that many games doesn't mean you're going to win the World Series. But for some reason, if you win 108, it means you're going to win the World Series.
Literally, I mean,
you know, but you know, just get back to the Red Sox. There, they had Mookie Betts, you know, in his prime. They had JD Martinez just having a crazy season. They just had such a good run for that team. And the Yankees were so good that season, but for some reason the mojo was just on the Red Sox side, and it just couldn't be subsided. They ended up beating a very, very good Dodgers team in the World Series, one of the highest win totals for World Series ever. I think the Dodgers won 106 games that year. So you had a 108 win team beating a 106 win team in the World Series. I'm pretty sure if that's not the highest win total for World Series of all time, it's very close to it. So the 18 Red Sox, I mean, you could split hairs and you could put them lower or higher or leave them off the list. But for some reason, they just stood out to me, and I just felt like they deserved a little credit.
That's definitely a great team. I mean, they smacked my Yankees all the time. I mean, one game that year, they beat us like 18-4 one game. It was right before the playoffs started, and we're like, okay, well, we're going to be versus them again, and they just crushed us.
And I'll never forget that JD Martinez home run off of.
Yeah, I was just about to say that.
Yep, and right over the big green monster off of what's his name? Who gave that up again? The lefty.
Who was pitching? Yeah.
He's with Minnesota now.
Jay Happ. Popped out of my head.
Jay Happ.
Oh, Jay Happ, yeah. Yep. He was so great the whole year, too. Also on playoffs game, and we just fell apart.
7-0 down the stretch for the Yankees if they traded for him. 7-0,
yeah.
And then got smacked in that playoff start.
I'll never forget that game. I was at a sports bar, and I was talking, I was wearing my Yankees jersey. I was talking all this smack. I'm like, okay, playoff time. Here we come. And people were looking at me. Someone brought me around. Like, they just saw I'm just sitting there defeated. And someone brought me around a drink. They're like, here you go, kid. I was like, thanks, man. I was like, I'm not slewing in Boston, but I was like, come on, Yankees next year. Yeah.
Oh man. All right, fellas. Well, let's keep it going. Number 6. We'll start with Dan this time. Dan, who you got number 6?
Number 6, I got the 77 Yankees, the team that I mentioned earlier. Literally was a team that was a result of Steinbrenner being leg driven after falling short of a World Series a year before. He looked like he was willing to spend all that money he needed to win that World Series. And that team, they had it all worked out well. They pulled it off. The Mr. October, that whole dynasty, that late 70s began with that team.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, the Yankees added Reggie to that lineup, and after falling just a couple of games short of winning the World Series in 76, came back, got it done in 77. I think they were 99-63 that year, if I correctly remember that. And they went on and beat the Dodgers in the World Series. So definitely good pick. One of the, fun Yankee teams to watch, the Bronx Zoo and all that. So, yeah. So who did you have at number 6, Mike?
Dan, that's a great pick. I mean, that's one of my dad's favorites. My dad has talked about that Yankees team forever. I feel like any old timer or anyone older who's a Yankees fan always brings up that team. So great pick. I have to go a way bit older. I had to go with the 1909 Pittsburgh Pirates. They, won 110 games. And look at this. A lot of the teams on my list don't have this stat. They literally led the league in doubles, triples, runs, extra base hits, batting average, and slugging. That was just a complete domination. And they had, legendary Honus Wagner, who look at his stats in 1909. He led the National League. He had a 339 batting average with a 909 OPS, and he had 54 extra base hits. That's just insane. He had a total of 242 total bases. Literally, I wrote in big bold, a true one-man show. The guy just, without him, they weren't winning. They did have 220-plus winners, pitchers. I'm sorry, I forgot the names offhand. But, Honus Wagner just really took that team, and they just skyrocketed.
Yeah, and he was at the end of his career there, too, and still had a great year. I think he was like 36 or 37, and everybody thought he was washed up, but he still had a great year. And they ended up going out there and beating the Detroit Tigers. This was their first World Series. They beat, I think Ty Cobb was 22, and he led the majors that year. He had 377, and they still beat the Tigers that year. The Pirates, very good team, very good pick. Now, I only left they're actually not on my list. I really was scrutinizing and trying to get them on my list, but the only reason I didn't was just because it I don't know, it just seemed like and as much as I respect them, as much as I put old teams like the 29 A's and the 37 Yankees and everything, who all you had to do was finish with the best record and get to the World Series, I felt like the competition was a little bit less in 1909, and that's the only reason. But come on, you beat they would be just out of my top 10. So I'm not taking anything away from the Pirates.
That's fair. If they didn't win 110 games, and beat specifically Ty Cobb, they'd be short of mine too. But that was just enough for me to put it in there. So I completely understand fair if you don't have them. That's why they're number 6. They're a little better. They're right below half for me, but they're not like the next tier. So definitely fair. I'm curious what your pick is.
Well, let's go with Dan first. Who do you think for number 6, Dan? Or did I already take yours?
I think you already.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, did the Yankees.
You gave the Yankees. Okay. Now for me, I got the 1975 Cincinnati Reds. Now I know Dan went with the 76 Reds, but I think the best team out of those Reds teams from the 70s, the Big Red Machine, was the 75 Reds. They went 108-54, obviously led by Sparky Anderson, Johnny Bench, a slew of Hall of Famers, Pete Rose, Dave Concepcion. You go down that list, they had every big guy you could imagine. George Foster was on that team. They beat the Red Sox in one of the greatest World Series of all time, 4-3. And really, when you look at the Red Sox too, how tough is that? They lost to some of the greatest teams of all time. They lost, in '67 to a great Cardinals team. They lost in '75 to one of the greatest Reds teams of all time. They lost in '86 to one of the greatest Mets teams of all time.
Yeah.
So it's just like, man, they kept losing in 7. Every single one of those series was in 7 games. So it's almost like they're being tested. But I
was happy about all that.
Yeah, with the Reds, it's tough for me to go against the Reds. So I'm gonna stick with them there. The 75 Reds beat the Red Sox in 7.
I do agree. That's my favorite Reds team too, is the 75. Even though they compared to 76, they actually had 6 more. In 76, they had 6 more wins and 6 more losses, obviously. But without that 75 team, obviously I don't think there's a 76 team to win. So I'm with you on that. The 75 team I rank slightly higher than the 76.
Yeah. Just when you look at the wins and everything like that, it's tough to go against. But and so we'll get to our top 5 now. We'll start with Mike. Who do you like as your number 5?
It's actually a team you had mentioned already, the 1929 Philadelphia Athletics. I won't say too much about them because you already mentioned them, but one cool story I really like about them is that most people don't know is before the 29 season, Babe Ruth literally said to the public, just give us the World Series championship. We're going to win it. And that pissed the Athletics off. And they literally said to amongst his team, we're not letting this happen. This is our year, because they were so outraged by that. And so not only did they win the World Series, but they won the American League pennant by 18 games over the Yankees. I mean, how often do you say that to just the Yankees, just won 2 years prior with the murderous row.
One of the best teams of all time.
Yeah. And they beat them by 18 games to me, and 104 wins with 46 losses. That's just great.
Yeah, one of the best teams of all time, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
At any place on this list, you can't argue with the Philadelphia A's from 29, one of the greatest teams of all time. Dan, who you got kicking off your top five?
Top five, I have to go with the 98 Yankees, a team that looked like it was like built to win the World Series.
Wow, you got 98 Yankees at 5, man. So I thought that Mike was doing the Mets dirty, sticking the Mets down there. You got the 98 Yankees at 5. Wow, Dan.
Yeah.
So, I can't argue with that. I mean, at least they're in your top 5. One of the greatest teams of all time, man. And we got to watch it firsthand. So definitely don't disagree with you there. As for me, though, I'm going to pick the 86 Mets.
I had a feeling you're going to pick that one. Yeah.
So the Mets come in at number 5 for me. I really, really was trying to fight to get them higher. But, when you just look at the teams I had above them, it's really tough to stick the 86 Mets higher than a bunch of these teams. But, Mike, you had the 86 Mets on here earlier. So, you pretty much said it perfectly. You had a guy like Doc Gooden anchoring that rotation. And a lot of people forget, too, about Bobby Ojeda, who came in after a heralded trade with the Red Sox, who was kind of
I was guilty. I forgot about him actually offhand. Yeah,
he had a great year too, going 18-5. So you have Bobby Ojeda on that team, Sid Fernandez, the big Hawaiian, out there getting the job done, and a great bullpen consisting of guys like Doug Sisk and Jesse Orosco and Rick Aguilera. So that 86 Mets team was deep. You mentioned Keith Hernandez, guys like Mookie Wilson, Kevin Mitchell, who would go on to be an NL MVP with the Padres. No, I'm sorry, not the Padres, the San Francisco Giants in '89.
Yeah, I was about to say, yeah.
But he, those stupid West Coast teams screwed me up for a second. But the Mets, that the '86 team, just like you mentioned, they had a lot of fight, they had a lot of heart, and it seemed like they went out there and just got the job done. You mentioned, the Babe Ruth in '29 said that they're going to win the World Series. The Mets, before they even played a game that year, had that "Let's Go Mets, we're going to win the World Series" song come out. Yeah. So it was a lot like that.
Yeah, they started out hated, and one of my other favorite players too, that I was really upset. I mean, I was a little too young, obviously young, but I was so upset when I found out they got rid of Ray Knight. I think he was just a great piece for them, and I do think that changed the dynamic of their team. After what they got rid of him right after that. So in 87, he wasn't with them, if I recall correctly. But he's one of my all-time favorites on that team.
Yeah, I think if Ray Knight is on that 88 team 2 years later, that they beat the Dodgers and win the World Series.
I think so too.
Yeah. So I think he meant a lot to that team. So, okay, guys, now we're beyond number 5. Number 4, Mike, we'll start with you. Who do you got as your 4th team on this list?
All right, I have the 1939 Yankees. I think Dan mentioned them earlier, I think.
No, I mentioned the 37 Yankees.
Oh, 37, okay, yeah. I mean, just studs. I mean, they literally have the best run differential in MLB history with, 411. They just was 106 wins, 45 losses, 4-0 in the postseason, just animals. I mean,
no doubt about it. And that was
one of the best Yankee teams. A lot of people, try to make the comparison to them in the 27, with the run differential, and just say, I obviously have them 4th, but I mean, just a great team.
Yeah. I mean, you had guys that would end up being on that team, like Tommy Heinrich would be on that team, going to the dynasty days later on, a couple of years later.
Oh yeah.
You had obviously a young Joe DiMaggio in his prime. Joe Gordon, the second baseman, was just awesome. So when you look at that Yankee team, I mean, I was really debating between 39 and 37. Like I had 37 earlier in the list. you can't knock the 39 Yankees, one of the greatest teams of all time. And I only went with 37 because I felt like it was more representative of that Yankee run, because Lou Gehrig might have gotten a ring for playing a couple of games in 39, but he wasn't on the he had like 8 at bats.
Yeah, it was his last year,
Yeah, so he was really suffering from ALS at that point. So I mean, that's I know that's kind of like a superficial reason that I
no. Actually, it's funny. I thought that because when you said the 37, I knew I had 39. I was like, you know what? I was like, I think he's right there. I was thinking the same thing. I was like, you know what? Perfect pick. I should have flip flopped them from 8. I think you were perfect on that one. Yeah.
And Dan, who do you got number 4?
Number 4, I got the 1937 Yankees.
Oh, okay. There you go. You can't beat that right there. As we were just talking about them, perfect timing, Dan. As we're all in the. I mean, look, those Yankee teams from 36 to 39. You can't beat those teams. They were in a different world. It was even the Yankees from 49 to 53 that won the 5 straight was just on a different level too. But geez, when you look at the 30 Yankees, what I'd really like to see is let's put some of those 30 Yankee teams up against the 50s Yankee teams and see who wins.
Oh yeah.
That would be crazy. I mean, Yogi Berra going against Bill Dickey and all these guys. So Whitey Ford pitching against Lefty Gomez. So it's that would be a lot of fun if that was possible. But So Dan, you nailed it too, just like you did, Mike. Those 30 Yankees.
Say poor Ted Williams in that era. Just poor Ted Williams. I mean, the best hitter in baseball history, at least for a lefty. And just like, damn, you had to go against all those stacked Yankees teams. Poor Ted Williams.
But I'll say this too about Ted Williams too. He got to the World Series that one year,
and he did not play well.
And he did not. So he had a shot. He got a shot, but he didn't win it though. All right, now boys. For me, number 4, I have the 1970 Baltimore Orioles.
Great team. Earl Weaver, man.
Yeah, Earl Weaver, no doubt about it. One of the greatest managers of all time. One of the filthiest mouths in baseball history. One of my favorite. But when you look at that team, man, you got Cuellar and Jim Palmer. Multiple 20-game winners. I believe they had 4 20-game winners on that team. Brooks Robinson anchoring third base. Frank Robinson. Boog Powell. They just had such a incredible team. Davey Johnson, the 86 Mets manager, was on that team. He actually made the last out in the 69 World Series, which is ironic. But the 70 Orioles team, they went 108-54, like I mentioned. Oh no, I'm sorry. They did go 108-54. They're one of the teams, like I mentioned before, that went 108-54 and won the World Series, one of those 4 teams. And they just came back even more determined after losing the Mets the year before. And they're just lucky they didn't have to face Seaver and Kuzman and Gentry and those the Nolan Ryan and those 69 Mets again. They're lucky about that, but they got through as they took on the Cincinnati Reds. They beat them, the Reds' first time back in the World Series since '61. So the Orioles got the job done there, beat them in 5. And yeah, it's just it's hard for me to ignore that 70 Orioles team as one of the greatest teams of all time. So, all right, guys. Now
that is a great team. Great pick. I literally have them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a great pick. I have them literally at number 11 on my list. Yeah.
Understandable. And the Orioles had a lot of great teams between 66 and 71. The Orioles had, probably their best run in their franchise history.
Yeah.
So, no doubt about that. So now we move on to our top 3. Top 3s. We'll start with Mike on this one. Mike, who do you got at number 3?
Well, both of you, this team has been mentioned before. It's one of the most fun teams I think I've ever watched, watched film on. I have the 1975 Cincinnati Red, the Big Red Big Red Monsters. We already mentioned them, but man, that's just a lineup from top to bottom. The whole team you got a guy like Pete Rose, I'm not sure if it was that exact year, but, sprints to first base, being a walk. I mean, the guy was a stud, the whole team.
Yeah.
And
Tony Perez, Dave Concepcion, when you look at that list and to think that that they added Seaver a couple of years later, and that's when they stopped winning World Series. Just doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
And one of my biggest favorite stats about them is their on-base percentage is a 424. I mean, the team knew how to get on base. They didn't really worry about as much as the home runs and stuff like that. Their job was just get on base. And it was just a good fundamental of baseball. Like, let's, grind, play hard, dig our heels into the dirt and just go. And I think you're showing anyone the sport of baseball and just, want to teach them the game. 75 Reds is one of the best teams to watch, in my opinion.
No doubt about it. It. And how about you, Dan? Who do you got number 3?
Number 3, I got the 86 Mets, a team that just felt like they were going to win a World Series, especially after they just barely not made the playoffs the year before. Yep. That team looked like from the get-go they were going to win it. And they just had the right group of people to dominate. They had a couple of young guys. A couple of guys came up in the farm system. They had couple of veterans. I meant that leadership of Carter and Hernandez.
Yeah,
that was a team that was poised to win the World Series, and they seem to have a lot of fight. You don't see many guys that play like they played 27 outs. They use every one of those at their advantage.
Dan, you're very right. You're very right with these Mets too, and you nailed it on the head when you said they just missed the playoffs the year before. They won 98 games. Now, could you imagine this? A world in 1985 where the Mets won 98 games and the Yankees won 97, and they didn't even make the playoffs. But then fast forward 15 years later, where in 2000 the Mets win 94 games and the Yankees win 87, and they're playing in the World Series. So
crazy. Yeah.
It just goes to show you the year by year for baseball how weird it is at times. But that's why I definitely think the wild card was a much needed thing, because the 85, 86 or the 85 AL and NL playoffs would have been a lot more fun if you had the Yankees and the Mets in there. No doubt about that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So for me, number 3, that'd be the 1961 Yankees. I know it's been mentioned by both you guys already. Honestly, my top 3 teams are Yankees. They're all 3 of them are Yankee teams. So it's the 61 Yankees. When you look, they beat the Reds 4-1. The Reds were a great young team at that point. Very young Pete Rose starting that team up. The Yankees manager Ralph Houck was taken over for it was his first year after Casey Stengel left. And, the Yankees had lost the previous year in the World Series to the Pirates in just a crazy 7-game series that ended with Bill Mazeroski hitting the walk-off home run. The Yankees lost that game 10-9. You scored 9 runs in Game 7 of the World Series and lost. That's a tough pill to swallow. So after Casey, quote-unquote, retired before getting picked up by the Mets, and they promoted, Ralph Houck, who'd been with the organization for a bunch of years at that point. And then when you look around that team, obviously, everybody talks about Mickey Mantle hitting 54 and Maris's 61 and Whitey Ford winning 25. But, one other guy, too, that everybody forgets about, catcher Elston Howard. Ellie went out that year and hit 348. One of the best years a Yankee catcher has ever had. So, that team was just as complete as it gets. They won 109 games, beating Cincinnati in the World Series. Can't leave them out of my top 3 for me.
Great pick.
So now, boys, we're getting down to the nitty gritty here. We're down to our final 2. Number 2 on your list. We'll start with Mike. Who do you got on your list as the second greatest team of all time?
Well, again, it is a Yankee. I think Dan, ranked this team a little too low in his list. I have the 98 Yankees, and man, were they fun to watch. I mean, they were a team that, it would be the 7th inning, but okay, the game's just starting now. Oh, we're down 5 runs. Okay, let's win 7-5. Let's win 8-5. It's just, they won 114 games that year, 48 losses. And it's one of the, don't quote me, I'm not sure if it's exactly, but I know until 2015, so it could have changed, but they had 10 guys with 10 or more home runs, which in their whole lineup is, believe it or not, I mean, it sounds like so low, but you guys know the sport for baseball. That's pretty tough to actually have.
In today's day and age, that's not that big of an accomplishment, but back in the day, in the 90s and everything. Even though people were hitting a lot of home runs in the 90s, it still was not as prevalent as it was today. And
exactly.
that's an impressive feat, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
That Yankee team, right up there.
They just had everything. I mean, every position. And you just had guys. I mean, think about it, their team was so good. You have a guy like Bernie Williams, who people don't really mention, because even though he had maybe one of his best years that year. Like, think about it.
He hit 339 that year.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. Just an insane season. You just knew that, you had Tino, Paul O'Neill, Derek Jeter. I don't have to go through the lineup, but just a great.
And we mentioned the Wells perfect game before.
Yeah.
Everything just fell right into place. David Cohn settling into his spot with the Yankees, winning 20 games. It just incredible.
And what always I loved real quick was you would have Joe Torre, who I mentioned earlier, you would have a guy like Jeter who would be like, 3 for 3 with like a home run, and he would pull him out. Like, what are you doing, Torre? And then put in, anyone on the bench, and that guy would hit a game-winning home run in the bottom of the 9th inning. It was just like all these, like, it would go against, analytics wasn't a thing then, but it would go against today's standards of analytics. And it was just like, all right, Torre, just keep doing your magic, and the team was just
pushing all the right buttons.
Yeah.
And how about you, Dan? Who do you have as number 2?
Number 2, I have the 2004 Red Sox, a team that looked like that was just like motivated from the way the year earlier, the way they had ended that Game 7, 2003 NLCS. They looked like they were determined. Even the moves they were made with Schilling, they were determined not to be fazed by being on the wrong side of a rivalry.
Yeah, you're right.
They were not fazed by the burden of the supposedly that curse, the burden that they could never win it. They always come up short. They were not fazed. That team had a chemistry all of its own.
Yeah, and they were this close before the season to acquiring the Alex Rodriguez before the Yankees swooped in. And as a matter of fact, I think me and Mike, our cousin Danny Murphy, me and him played a big role in the curse of the Bambino being broken that season, because I never told this story on the podcast on the air before, but we went to the Hall of Fame a week after the Yankees acquired Alex Rodriguez. It was February of 2004, and this is, if you remember, Nomar Garcia-Parra was still on the Red Sox at this point.
Yeah,
he would end up getting traded in July of that year before they'd go on the run. They picked up Orlando Cabrera to be the shortstop, picked up a couple of guys, Doug Mankiewicz. So this was before they traded him. So what me and our cousin Danny did was we went in the Hall of Fame, and we went to and remember, the last game that the Red Sox had played at this point was Game 7 of the 2003 World Series that Dan just referenced, where Tim Wakefield gave up the home run to Aaron Boone to send the Yankees to the World Series. So
that home run.
One of the greatest Yankee moments in, at least of our lifetime. And so we bought a Boston Red Sox Nomar Garcia-Parra shirt. We went to the Babe Ruth exhibit in the Hall of Fame, and in front of the Babe Ruth exhibit, we took the shirt, made the sign of the cross, and said to the Bambino, "Please forgive the Red Sox. Let them win the World Series this year and break the curse of the Bambino." And 8 months later, the Red Sox were World Series champions. So you're welcome, Boston.
I could blame you too.
I feel like I contributed more than Manny Ramirez and David Ortiz.
Wow,
I'm actually gonna have to tell that story next time I'm in Boston to some people I know in Boston.
Yes. So
I definitely think that beats your Mike Piazza story that I always used to love hearing. Wow, that's upsetting to hear. Yeah.
Now what's the Mike Piazza story? Is the Piazza story when I told him that I loved him?
Yeah, I tell people that, and I'm like, oh, my cousin. People look at me like I'm like, no, you don't understand. It's Mike freaking Piazza. I'm like, he's my second favorite player. I'm a Yankee fan. Oh, that one makes me laugh all the time.
No, Dan, just so you know the story, I don't know if I've told you this before, but this was right after Mike Piazza's final game as a Met in 2005. And me and my cousin Jim sat outside Shea Stadium. This was after a Mets-Rockies game. I want to say it was October 3rd, 2005. I'm afraid of these dates.
I
Wow,
remember that game very well.
Yeah, and so we were standing outside the players' gate where everybody, where we knew the players left. And this was hours after the game. So every other player had left. There was probably only a crowd of about 8 or 9 people, including me and my cousin, standing there. And Piazza pulls out of the gate finally. And everybody's like, holy shit. So we run over to his car, and I didn't have anything for him to sign. I didn't have a ball. I didn't have a pen. I didn't have anything. So there's a kid in front of me getting the autograph. And after the kid, he signs for Piazza, the kid moves out of the way, and Piazza looks up at me like he was expecting me to have something for him. And I just looked at him like, I love you, Mike. And he just looks at me and he goes, thank you. And just puts his car in drive and drives away.
Man, I can only imagine what I would have been like. I mean, you're a really bigger diehard than I was. Wow.
I had no idea what to say. But
that makes me laugh every time I hear that.
But all right, boys. So let's finish this up right now. I know I've been keeping you guys on here for a long time. I really appreciate you guys sticking with me here. It's been a lot of fun. And so for the final one, Dan, we'll start with you. Who's your number one greatest team of all time?
I probably have to go with the last time I remember people feeling like confident that the Yankees were going to win the World Series, 1999. Just every Yankee fan I knew just felt like, yeah, it was just like an easy win.
Yeah. Wait, so you're going with the 99 Yankees over the 98?
Yeah, the 99. Last time I remember.
Okay. That makes sense. Well, the 99 Yankees were great, too. You got to remember they added Roger Clemens for that run.
Rocket.
And the 99 Yankees, I think they won 99 games that year, too.
I think you're right on that.
Yeah.
That's how I was
in my head. Yeah, so I think that the 99 Yankees, you can't go against them. They won the World Series. They swept the Braves again, 4 straight. That was a great Braves team, too. But yeah, I mean, I can't argue with you there. The 99 Yankees, definitely great team, great run, no doubt about it. And as a matter of fact, actually, I think I forgot to tell you who my number 2 team of all time was.
I thought you did, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So let me just catch up with you guys real quick. As my number 2 team of all time might surprise some people, the 1927 Yankees. Now,
wow,
a lot of people are going to have them as number 1. Totally get it. Totally understand. Can't really make it.
Who your number 1 will be then?
What's that?
I will be curious to see who your number 1 will be then.
Yes. Well, I got the Yankees as the 27 Yankees is number 2. I mean, look, Miller Huggins, one of the greatest Yankee managers of all time. You have Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, what's it called? Tony Lazzari, too. A lot of people forget about Tony Lazzari, one of the better Yankee second basemen in their history. Just such a deep team, murderer's row, like we've mentioned. So that's why I got them at number 2. Now I'll explain when we get to number 1 in a minute why I chose my number 1 team over the number 2 team. But I think it'll be pretty obvious in the long run. So I'll explain it in a minute. But before I get to my number 1, so we know Dan chose the 99 Yankees as his number 1. Mike, who do you got as your number 1?
Well, you just said them. That's why I'm very curious to see who your number 1 is. I have the Murderers Row, the 27 Yankees. I mean, you have, like you said, Ruth and Lou Gehrig. And if I recall, I actually think Lou Gehrig had more RBIs than Ruth that year. Yeah, Ruth had the home runs, but it was all about Babe Ruth and stuff. Obviously, I met one man when I was about 9 years old. My grandfather's friend at a McDonald's, and this guy was literally like 102 years old. And the first thing he just happened to bring up to me was Babe Ruth. I saw Babe Ruth, and my eyes like lit up. I was like, wow, I'm meeting someone who says they went Babe Ruth. And then, he did the whole cliche thing with, the old guy never lets go of you because he wants to talk to you for like 5 hours. But it was just to hear him talk about the passion of him as a kid, and that was his first world experience he wanted to share with me. I mean, we spoke about other things like the depression and, just everything else. But to hear him say, the greatest thing in his life was to see Babe Ruth play.
Yeah.
And that 27 Yankees, I just wish I could have been there, you know.
Yeah.
And so I gotta go with them.
If I had a time machine, the place I'd be going to would be checking out the 27 Yankees and seeing Babe Ruth live, because you know what, Babe Ruth was such an icon at that point. You know, in World War II, when the Japanese and the United States were engaging each other in like close enough combat where they can hear each other, the Japanese would be known for yelling "to hell with Babe Ruth." Believe it or not, because
I did not know that.
That's how big of an icon he was, that they would literally curse the name of Babe Ruth to try to get under the skin and piss off the American soldiers. So I always thought that was very interesting. It just shows how big he was at that point. And he really was bigger than life, especially he was bigger than the sport. No doubt about it at that point. Okay. But so you've got the 27 Yankees. Dan, you had the 99 Yankees. For me, it's the 1998 Yankees. This is a team, you know, went 114-48. I can't go against them. I watched every game of that season. I saw firsthand how dominant that Yankee team was. I mean, you even mentioned it earlier when you broke down the 98 Yankees, Mike. Where it seemed like if they were down by a couple of runs, boom, before you know it, if they were down by 2, a 3 spot would be put up in 2 seconds. If they were down by 4, a 5 spot would come up out of nowhere. If they needed a big fight or something like that to rile the team up, Darryl Strawberry would go out and knock somebody on his ass. Or Graham Lloyd would come in and, you know, get a big, you know, like they had such a deep pen at that point too, where you had Graham Lloyd, Mariano Rivera, Jeff Nelson, all these guys you could just throw out there in a big moment. The rotation with David Cohn, you know, Andy Pettit, and you know, we mentioned David Wells earlier, throwing the perfect game that year. You know, and then not to mention too, another guy that really flies under the radar. A lot of people forget about him. Don't forget what Shane Spencer did when he got called up in September. The guy hit 10 home runs. He was hitting grand slams. He hit 370 for that month. Like the Yankees needed any more help. This guy went out there and had a fantastic month. And then Chad Curtis in the World Series hitting home runs.
What was that, game 3, I think?
Yeah, it was game 3. Yeah. So, you know, when you look at what's it called? Oh, and Scott Brocious. Scott Brocious was a career backup. This is a guy that goes out there, wins World Series MVP against San Diego that year. He is, you know, he hits 300. This guy never even hit close to 300. He hit 300. He drove in 100 runs, 18 home runs. So, you know, played Gold Glove defense. You had Girardi and Posada behind the plate. Tino Martinez coming to his prime. And another big thing that people forget about too, because this is before he kind of fell apart a little bit, Chuck Knobloch. Chuck Knobloch, the Yankees picked him up.
I did forget about him.
They picked him up in February of 98, right before spring training really got started in earnest. And he was the exact leadoff hitter. You stuck him at the leadoff spot, Jeter right behind him, and Paul O'Neill 3, and boom, the Yankees were off and running.
Yeah, I mean, that's the same thing. I watched that team. That was just a stellar team. Actually, that was a big year with, you know, our Aunt Cornine. You know, my dad would just love to mess with her, with, you know, him being the Yankees fan, she being the Met fan. You know, I feel bad for her because, you know, she must have just felt the torment all year. That just like that game was just no joke. And he would just, you know, mess with her about it all the time. Oh, yeah, you know, down by 6 runs. Okay, wait till the 7th.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, you know, as a Mets fan, it was torment because we kind of felt like we were on the precipice of getting back to the playoffs. Because remember, by 98, the last time the Mets had been in the playoffs was 88. So it'd been a 10-year drought. And they picked up Piazza in May of that year. May 23rd, they traded for Piazza from the Marlins. And he ended up having
date. That's crazy.
Oh, I remember. Yeah. Well, actually, it was May 22nd they traded for him. May 23rd, he made his debut.
Oh, wow, that's crazy.
I remember
that's
that
impressive. Doesn't surprise me.
I was about 16. Went and I bought a Piazza jersey, which, by the way, still fits me. The black jersey still fits me.
Yeah, man. And, you know, and not to mention, too, they were two teams. The Mets were in contention, having a really good year. They were leading the wild card up until 5 games left of the season. And then what do you think they did? In typical Mets fashion, they went out and lost the final game of a 3-game series against the Expos at Shea Stadium, which they should have won. They lost that game and then went out and got swept 4 straight in Atlanta to end the season. So they missed the wild card by 1 game because they lost the last 5 games of the season.
But I still remember being at that game at Shea that day.
What, where they lost to the Expos?
Yep, I was there.
Ugh. And I'll never forget the last game of the season too, where Hideo Nomo was coming in relief.
Oh man!
And that's how bad it had gotten.
Yeah.
So but yeah, I mean, to get off the 98 Mets, who definitely didn't make this list, the 98 Yankees, man, one of the greatest teams of all time, and in my opinion, as much as I always respected the 27 Yankees, I always give them their respect because
my one too. So I can't even argue
it. But I also feel like the 98 Yankees get the edge for me because it's a slightly longer season. So the regular season didn't really play a factor, but the deeper playoffs, deeper teams they went against, like, look, when you look at that 98 Padres team, the Yankees beat in the World Series, you have Tony Gwynn on that team. You have Greg Vaughn, who had 50 home runs. You have, Kevin Brown as their ace, who would be going to be a Yankee later in his career. But this is, one of the premier pitchers in baseball at the time. Trevor Hoffman was their closer, the Hall of Famer. So it's not like they went out there and beat a soft team. Yeah. And then they had to run through the gamut in the playoffs too. They had to knock off the Indians in the ALCS. They had to knock off the I forget who they played in the first round, but they had to go through 3 rounds of playoffs to win their ring. And not to take anything away from the 27 Yankees, but I think the 98 Yankees still get that edge.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong there. Longer postseason. They only lost 2 games. They're 11-2. And you mentioned a guy I always talk about, Tony Gwynn, who I just feel like didn't he get enough appreciation because he was just, how many batting titles that guy won? Yeah. But I mean, to me, even still, like, one of my favorite players right now is DJ LeMahieu because he's just such a great batting average. So it's a very old school thing compared to today's era. But Tony Gwynn, I don't know the stat. I'll have to send it to you. It's in my phone. But I think he can literally go if you were to play today, he can go 3,000 at bats and strike out and still be a 300 hitter.
Yeah.
But the guy was incredible.
His hitting numbers are almost like Gretzky's, hockey numbers where,
exactly,
one of my favorite Gretzky stats ever is you could take away every goal Wayne Gretzky scored in his NHL career, and he would still have more points than anyone in NHL history just off his assists alone.
That's insane.
And it's the same thing, just like you said with Tony Gwynn. He was I believe a 339 career hitter. So he could go, like you said, 2,000, 3,000 at bats without even getting a hit, and he'd still have a 300 batting average. So that just goes to show what a fantastic hitter he was, and a surefire, no doubt about it, one of the greatest of all time.
Exactly.
Yeah. So hey, boys, I want to thank you for joining me here today. This was a lot of fun. Had a great time talking to you guys, talking baseball, bullshitting. So we definitely got to do this again some point in the future. Mike, I want to thank you for taking the time out of you here. Mike, before we get out of here, do you have anything to plug? Let the people know where they can find you on Twitter or anywhere else, and also give your podcast a good plug too.
Yeah, thank you. Again, I appreciate being here. For everyone listening, my podcast is going to be called Critic Christodora _631. That's the name of our Instagram and Twitter. Again, I'll say it again, Critic Christodora _631. Or you can just look up my Facebook, Mike Christodora. But, I'm going to really start posting things now. And I have a couple videos ready to go. And I just had so much fun. And, we'll be honored to be on your podcast again, Rob.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming on, Mike. And Dan, how about you? What do you got to plug? I know you always got the Eastside Dave show Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. on Compound Media. One of the
that's right. Tuesday, 7:30, compoundmedia.com. The Eastside Dave show. Also, I got my Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter, Bobo103NYC. And my YouTube, it's one word, Daniel Kurlan. I got some videos out there. I put some little funny stuff out there on my YouTube.
Yeah, so a lot of funny stuff on there too. If you like dogs and you like just to laugh your ass off, check out Dan's YouTube because he's got a lot of funny stuff on there. He's always coming up with something entertaining. And if you don't see it on the Eastside Dave show, you can go check it out on his YouTube afterwards. So thanks for joining me today again, Dan. Always a pleasure to have you on the show. Mike, you're the best. Thanks for coming on too. So with that, we're going to wrap it up, everybody. So thanks for watching. Hopefully we got some of these predictions right. If not, I hope you enjoyed it anyway. I'll be back on WGBB shortly, probably a week or two. I think I saw April. I don't remember. April, what's the week of? I think the 18th. I'm on next again. So I'll be putting out podcasts and everything again. I'll be doing my regular bullshit. So, so thank you guys for joining me. Thanks everybody for tuning in.
Yep.
And ladies and gentlemen, with that, this is the final seconds of the Coffee or Kramer podcast. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you guys next time.